Before I tell you this, let me confess something personal. There was a time, not so long ago, when I thought I had finally cracked the code of life. You know that moment when everything feels aligned? When your heart races, not out of fear, but out of recognition. That was me. After years of searching, meditating, reading, and peeling layers of illusions, I touched something that felt like awakening. And for a while, it was intoxicating. Colors seemed brighter, conversations deeper, silence softer. Even the air felt charged, like every breeze carried a secret meant just for me. But then, without warning, it was gone. Not the memory, not the knowledge, the fire. The inner fire that made me wake up at 5 a.m. just to stare at the sunrise, whispering, "I get it now." The fire that made me hungry for purpose, for change, for expansion. One morning, I woke up and it wasn't there. No passion, no drive, no hunger, just a heavy kind of emptiness. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you're even nodding right now thinking, that's me. That's exactly what I feel. If that's you, pause for a second. Don't scroll away. Don't let your finger betray the part of you that's still curious. Because this right here, right now, might be the most important story you'll hear today. And while you're here, hit subscribe. Not for me, but for yourself. So you don't lose this thread when life tries to drown you in noise again. Because if you felt unmotivated after awakening, you're not broken. You're not failing. You're not even alone. Let me take you into my own spiral. Because only there can I show you the mirror that Jung himself held up for me. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. I looked around and saw other people glowing with their enlightenment. Social feeds full of gurus saying, awakening is the end of suffering. Awakening is bliss. And I thought, so why do I feel worse than before? Why do I feel hollow, detached, like life is happening behind glass? It wasn't depression, not exactly. I wasn't drowning in despair. It was more like drifting, like being on a raft in the middle of the ocean with no wind, no current. And that sounds peaceful until you realize it's suffocating. Because without direction, without movement, peace curdles into paralysis. I went through the motions. I ate. I worked. I smiled when people asked if I was okay. But inside, there was this question echoing like a broken record. Now what? And that's the part no one warns you about. They celebrate the awakening but never talk about the hangover. The in-between, the twilight zone where your old self is gone but your new self hasn't arrived yet. Jung had a name for this space, the sacred in-between. A kind of psychological cocoon where the caterpillar is no longer crawling, but the butterfly isn't flying either, except when you're inside it. It feels like failure. I remember one night staring at my ceiling, feeling the stillness of my own emptiness, and a ridiculous thought crossed my mind. Maybe I peaked too early. Maybe that little glimpse of bliss was all I get. Maybe the universe gave me a free sample and said, that's enough for you. Back to the grind. See, irony survives even in the void. I laughed bitterly at myself, because isn't that the human way? To take the infinite and shrink it down to a tragedy of personal failure. That's when Jung's voice came back to me. Not literally, obviously, he's been dead a while. But through the words I had read months earlier and discarded, because they felt too abstract at the time. He said something like this: the greatest burden of the self is not pain, but meaninglessness. And suddenly, I understood. Awakening had dismantled me. It had stripped me of my old illusions, my borrowed identities, my borrowed motivations. The fire went out because it was never mine in the first place. It belonged to the old me, the one who ran on fear, on proving myself, on chasing goals that weren't even mine. When that scaffolding collapsed, of course I felt empty, because emptiness is the price of truth before it becomes freedom. Now, let me be clear. This stage, this hollow, this strange detachment is not glamorous. It doesn't look good on Instagram. It doesn't sell books, but it's real. And if you felt it, You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the silence after the symphony, the blank page after the last chapter, the pause where life dares you. Will you stay here, or will you write again? I wish I could tell you I snapped out of it quickly, that I meditated one morning and boom, fire reignited. But that's not how it went. Instead, I wrestled. I fought the void like a stubborn opponent. I tried routines, gratitude journals, even more spiritual practices, as if I could force the universe to light me up again, but nothing worked. The more I fought, the heavier it got. Until, and this is the part that stings, I realized the void wasn't my enemy, it was my teacher. Because what Jung calls the sacred in-between is actually the initiation. It's where you stop outsourcing your fire to borrowed goals and start discovering the ember that's truly yours. And embers don't shout, they whisper. They hide under ashes, waiting for patience, not panic. So here's where my story becomes your mirror. If you're unmotivated after awakening, if you're staring at your ceiling wondering where your fire went, let me tell you, it's not gone. It's just waiting for you to stop looking outside for matches. And yes, it hurts. It feels humiliating to admit you don't have the same drive you had before. But this is the paradox. Losing motivation is the sign. You're shedding false motives. What comes next? Well, that's the rest of this journey. But for now, let me leave you with this. If you're drifting, if you're empty, if you're caught in that sacred in-between, don't run. Don't label yourself broken, because this, my friend, is the exact place where the butterfly learns its wings. I wish I could tell you the story stopped there, with Jung's words echoing like a wise soundtrack that instantly gave me peace. But no, awakening is never that neat. It's messy, sometimes even embarrassing. Because while I knew I wasn't broken, my body and mind didn't get the memo. I remember dragging myself to the office, half present. People asked the usual, "How are you?" And I gave the usual, "I'm fine." That little two-word lie that might as well be humanity's unofficial anthem. But here's the thing, inside, I wasn't fine. I was suspended, not in crisis, not in bliss, just suspended. And that suspension scared me more than suffering ever had. Because pain has urgency, you have to move, but emptiness, it just sits there, like a roommate who never pays rent, but also never leaves. One day I sat in the park with my notebook, hoping to journal my way out of the fog. My pen hovered over the page, and do you know what came out? Just one sentence, over and over, like a child practicing letters. I don't know what to want. I don't know what to want. I don't know what to want. And as pathetic as it sounds, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because it felt true. And truth, when it first appears, this is where Jung becomes less like a philosopher and more like a mirror. He said that the ego, once dismantled, resists annihilation by clinging to roles, achievements, identities. But after awakening, those costumes don't fit anymore. And there you are, naked in your own psyche, trying not to shiver. I didn't want to admit that. So I did what any modern spiritual person does when lost. How to get motivation back after awakening. As if the internet could hand me a map out of the cocoon. The answers. A cocktail of contradictions. Some said, push harder. Discipline yourself. Others whispered, do nothing. Let the universe carry you. And somewhere in the mix, buy this $399 course that will fix you. I rolled my eyes so hard I gave myself a headache. Irony intact, but still I felt the pull of desperation. Because when you're adrift, you'll grab anything that looks like a rope, even if it's just seaweed. Here's what finally cracked the fog. Not a course, not a guru, not a grand revelation. It was my neighbor's kid. I was walking back home, head full of existential noise, when I saw her on the sidewalk with a piece of chalk, drawing something on the concrete. I slowed down, curious. And what was she drawing? A butterfly. The wings were uneven, the colors didn't match. But she was so absorbed, so delighted in the act of creating that she didn't notice me watching. I laughed softly this time, not bitterly, because it hit me. She wasn't asking if the butterfly was perfect. She wasn't questioning whether the world needed another chalk drawing. She wasn't waiting for motivation. She was just doing it. And in that small moment, Jung's sacred in-between stopped being theory. It became practical. The in-between is not punishment. It's rehearsal. It's the awkward, clumsy phase where you remember how to create without needing permission, purpose, or perfection. But let's be honest, living this is harder than talking about it, because the world doesn't applaud your sacred in-between. It pressures you. It asks, so what's next? What's your plan? What are you working on? And when you say, I don't know, people look at you like you've confessed to a crime. And maybe you've felt that too. That subtle shame of not having an answer. That itch to make something up just to seem like you're still playing the game. I played that game. I invented projects, told half-truths, smiled like I was fine. And all the while inside, I felt like a fraud. Until one day, I stopped playing. And that's when the void turned into something else. You see, Jung's idea wasn't that the void is forever. It's that the void is a threshold, and thresholds are uncomfortable, precisely because they aren't designed for permanence. You don't live in a doorway, you pass through it. But to pass through, you have to notice it. And most of us are too busy fighting, distracting, numbing ourselves to even realize we're standing in one. That was me. Until I noticed the chalk butterfly, until I saw that sometimes the only way forward is to stop asking the void for answers and start listening to its silence. So here's the paradox I want to share with you, the one that cracked open my own cocoon. The absence of motivation after awakening isn't failure, it's not regression, it's not laziness. It's your psyche's way of detoxing from borrowed purposes. It's the space where your old fire has died so your true ember can be seen. And that ember won't shout, it whispers, it flickers. It asks you to sit in stillness long enough to feel it. Most people run at this stage. They panic, thinking if I'm not producing, if I'm not striving, I'm nothing. But the courageous ones, the ones Jung would smile at, they stay, they let the emptiness do its work. And that's how motivation is reborn, not as fuel for ego, but as alignment with soul. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you let yourself not know? When was the last time you allowed yourself to just sit in the doorway, without sprinting to pick a side? Because if you can endure the in-between, not glamorize it, not dramatize it, just endure it, you'll discover what I did. Motivation after awakening isn't about chasing. It's about listening, and listening takes practice. There's a strange thing about emptiness. If you sit with it long enough, it stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like a kind of soil, silent, dark, but fertile. I didn't believe that at first. I thought silence meant nothing was happening, that my lack of drive was proof I'd lost something essential. But here's the truth I stumbled into awkwardly, unwillingly. Silence works like underground roots. You don't see them, but they're weaving life while the surface looks barren. Let me tell you about one night that made this real. I was lying awake again, that familiar insomnia, where your body begs for rest, but your mind insists on rehearsing. Every worry like a bad soap opera, bills, work, a creeping sense that I was wasting my life. I sighed so loudly I scared my cat off the bed. And then, in my irritation, I did something small but life-altering. I turned off the lamp, put down the book I wasn't even reading, and whispered into the dark. Okay, fine. If there's nothing, let there be nothing. I'll just breathe. Not profound, not enlightened. Honestly, it felt like giving up. But in that surrender, something shifted. I noticed my breath for the first time all day. Inhale, exhale. Not controlled, not fixed. Just there. Like the simplest proof I still belonged in this world. And as I followed that rhythm, the noise didn't vanish. But it softened, like background static losing volume. That night, I slept. And when I woke up, nothing external had changed. My problems hadn't dissolved, but something inside had tilted just slightly. The emptiness didn't feel as threatening. It felt inhabited. Here's what Jung never softened. True transformation doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with whispers, with tiny shifts, with noticing your own heartbeat without flinching. I had been waiting for some dramatic rebirth. Instead, my rebirth came like dawn, quiet, slow, unpretentious. And maybe that's why so many people miss it. We're trained to expect lightning bolts, but the psyche prefers candlelight. Weeks later, I caught myself doing something shocking, humming, just making tea, nothing fancy. But out came this absent-minded melody. And it startled me, not because I'd forgotten how to hum, but because it meant something in me had stirred again. A spark, not a wildfire. Not yet. And you know what? That was enough. Because sparks spread if you let them. Here's the secret, Jung hinted at, but never spelled out. After awakening, your motivation doesn't return as the old fuel, chasing validation, climbing ladders, polishing masks. It returns as curiosity, as play, as that child drawing uneven butterflies on the sidewalk. It's smaller than ambition, but truer than obsession. It doesn't roar, it hums. And from that hum, slowly, new songs are born. I know what you might be thinking right now. That's me. I'm in that empty in-between, waiting for something to ignite. But how long will it take? What if I never get it back? I thought the same. And here's the irony. The more I demanded an answer, the longer the silence lasted. But the moment I stopped interrogating the void and started listening to it, even clumsily, I began to change. Not instantly, not perfectly, but undeniably. So let me turn this toward you. If you've been feeling lost after your awakening, unmotivated, detached, like your purpose slipped through your fingers, pause right here. Breathe. Feel the inhale, the exhale, and hear this. You are not broken. You are becoming. Your emptiness is not failure. It's rehearsal. Your silence is not punishment. It's soil. Your lack of drive is not the end. It's the ember waiting for your stillness to feed it. And yes, the harvest is mandatory, but the sowing is free. What you sow right now, even in the void, is shaping the fire that will carry you forward. And before we close, let me tell you something important. If these words are echoing in you, if you felt your own reflection in my story, don't just disappear into the next distraction. Subscribe, not for me, for you, because this is the kind of reminder you'll need when the silence feels endless. And sometimes, one sentence at the right time can keep your ember alive. The ember is here, it's in you. And no algorithm, no expectation, no spiritual checklist can extinguish it. Your only task is to notice, to sit long enough in the doorway until the fire remembers its own name. And when it does, you won't just feel motivated again, you'll feel aligned. And alignment, unlike motivation, doesn't fade. That is what waits for you on the other side of awakening. Not a return to who you were, but the unveiling of who you always were beneath the masks, beyond the noise. The ember, the flame, the fire. Yours.